1 entire year. It's a bit mad, that, isn't it? Let's talk about it. Now, as I just said, we're at the 1 year anniversary of this thing, the PSVR2, a headset which I am enamored with still to this day, but it's given a lot of perspective having a year to sit on it, and especially being engaged with a headset as much as this, because with the PSVR 1 and all the Quest headsets and Oculus and HTC Vive, I was there, I was playing them all, but I wasn't engaging on it on a level where I was analyzing every game that comes along, or analyzing everything Sony says about it, and analyzing the headset and the mechanics and the actual hardware itself to the degree that I have with this. So I've had tons of use over the last year. I mean, you'll know that, the amount of videos we've put out, the amount of fun memories we've created with this thing. But yeah, a year has given a lot of space between the start and now to really analyze what works with the PSVR 2, what we're expecting going forward, what doesn't work. So I've broken this video down into a couple of sections, which you'll see in the time codes below, where we're going to be talking about various things that pertain to the PSVR 2, and I'm bringing you into the actual real disgusting world for a second, into my crowded and cramped university room, because I want to hold this thing up, I want to analyze it, talk about it. It'll help me formulate my sentences as we go, and I thought this is kind of a better format than just me speaking in voiceover, because this is an important one, it's a big one, so let's get straight into it without further ado. That being said, this video is definitely going to be longer than most of my other PSVR 2 ones. I do like to respect your guys' time as much as possible, but there's a lot to talk about here. So, as I said, without further ado, let's get into it. Our first topic of conversation is visuals. And to be honest, this is pretty amazing when we get the proper games for it. This is kind of split into two different areas because we've got resolution and we've got refresh rate and we've got a bunch of factors surrounding it. Now, let's tackle resolution first. On the whole, PSVR 2 has some incredible looking games in terms of the sharpness and resolution of them because the panels are so high definition and eye tracking as well, just incredible. Taking a look at the actual resolution of Horizon Call the Mountain, Kayak VR, Resident Evil 8 and 4, or say Red Matter 2, and even lately, as an example, Legendary Tales. That is an absolutely incredible game in terms of resolution. The actual quality of the anti-aliasing and how sharp everything looks is magnificent. But then we've also got the fair share of blurry games that's been ported over, but that's really down to the port quality, not the headset itself. The actual sharpness here is amazing. It's one of the best looking headsets that I've ever seen, with a caveat because there is of course a sweet spot. We'll get into that when we talk about the lenses in a little bit, but in terms of actual resolution of the headset, top quality here, especially Gran Turismo as well. I want to shout out and mention too, an incredible looking game in terms of still quality. Now, that isn't the only side to this talking point though, because we've got to talk about refresh rate too, because it's variable on this thing in terms of ghosting and how games are presented to you at what frame rate it's put straight into your eyeballs. Now, we have the high end of this with Red Matter 2, which is across the board one of the smoothest playing and looking games on PSVR 2. Looks nuts because it runs at a native 120 or 90 hertz. I think it's 120, but correct me if it's 90, which makes it feel incredibly real. The visuals can only be so good at a reprojected 60, and we've seen games like Resident Evil 4 and 8, even though Resi 4's refresh rate definitely isn't as noticeable as some other ones, it does have that 60 hertz ghosting. Horizon Call the Mountain, while I do absolutely adore it, is one of the biggest offenders for this, where you can see that ghosting happen when you smooth turn. That's where the headset falters. 1 year later, it's still one of my biggest issues with it, is that reprojection can make some people motion sick, which I've actually seen happen in real time with people that I put on the headset, and also just naturally degrades the quality of the visuals. However, I don't want to go out and say that it isn't a PSVR 2 issue, because of course it is. This headset is designed for this console, that's how this ecosystem works, but with the rumors of a PS5 Pro coming out this year, I wouldn't be surprised if we see that ghosting just done away with completely. I think that a PS5 Pro could eliminate that completely from this headset, and it would be pretty much incredible 120 refresh rate for everything. I think that's the thing that would push me to get a PS5 Pro, is that if the refresh rate is 120 for everything because of the extra power, I would easily buy one, because Horizon Call the Mountain at that 120 unreprojected, give it to me. Please. Those are the two sides of the coin in terms of visuals. Those are the two main bastions that I want to focus on. There's the ups and downs. After a year, we've kind of seen where it's landed. In terms of resolution quality, amazing. In terms of refresh rate and reprojection, not quite there. But it still is an incredible looking headset. And there are a couple of other factors, as I said, surrounding this, which I do want to touch on. The OLED panels is one of the biggest ones. You're going to get such high dynamic range out of this headset. And honestly, some games look so stunning, especially horror games like Resi 8 and 4, Propagation Paradise Hotel. Playing similar or the same games on other platforms like PSVR with LCD panels, it is a night and day difference. No pun intended, because of how black the OLED panels are. But the point is, you get such high contrast and quality in the HDR that there isn't another headset out there at the moment that you can buy for the price that you can of this that will give you the same range. Now, that does come with its own set of issues. Mirror, screen door, all of these effects can affect people to varying degrees and varying games. I think GT7, even though I do adore it, does have one of the biggest cases of mirror for me. But then again, a couple games that really utilize the OLED panels like Resi 4 and 8, I don't see it as much in. So again, it varies case by case. But overall, 1 year later, mirror is still something that can put people off this headset and make people think that their headset has something wrong with it when it doesn't. That's just because of the HDR OLED panels that the headset uses, and also the fact that you're looking at it through Fresnel lenses might also have an impact on visual quality. A year later, I find it incredibly easy to find my sweet spot, and that's mostly because of accessories like head straps, which I'll get into in a little bit. You can see my PSVR2 does not look the same as the normal model. Those Fresnel lenses are definitely something that, as we get into the later life cycle of the headset, obviously it's the first year, we still have, 5 years ahead of us probably. As headsets advance, especially standalone headsets and PCVR headsets, as they advance and use pancake lenses, this is going to be one of the only standing headsets with Fresnel lenses in it that I think we're going to see going forward, to be honest. And on the one hand, it makes the headset feel slightly outdated when putting it on and trying to find that sweet spot, especially if you haven't used it much before and you're not really used to knowing exactly where to put it on your head. Obviously, after a couple of months, you get used to it. That sweet spot can be easily found, but I do think, definitely with a bit of perspective, Fresnel feels outdated now, and in the future it's just going to feel more and more outdated as we go. And it's one of those things where I do kind of wish we had pancake lenses. It's not feasible at this price range to use OLED panels. You need micro OLED, I believe, which the Apple Vision Pro has. But yeah, Fresnel lenses are a trade-off that you're going to just have to deal with. And a year later, it's less of an issue for me because I know where my sweet spot exactly is, but I know overall for a lot of people, it can be kind of off-putting and can make you think that the headset is broken or is just having issues, when really you just have to adjust your sweet spot and adjust the back of the head strap on your head to really get it right. Now we've talked about the headset itself and visuals, I'm going to set it down to one side, and we're going to talk instead about these, the controllers. Now, I have a lot of thoughts about the Sense controllers, mostly incredibly positive. Let's get some of the best stuff out of the way first. The haptics in these are ridiculously good. It's one of their biggest selling points, and I think they are honestly so damn immersive, especially for games that utilize water like Kayak VR Mirage, Hubris I was playing the other day. Swimming through those levels and paddling around, it feels real. And the rain on the Kayak VR level, you can really feel it at the controllers, and I think that is one of its strongest points. Haptics here, and in the headset too, to an extent, make such an immersive impact on the player. That's one of the biggest strengths of the Sense controllers. Overall, I'm a really big fan of them. 1 whole year later, they have really done me well, but not without a couple caveats. Now, comfort can be a mixed bag depending on the person. For me, they are very, very comfortable. I feel like my hands fit perfectly in these, but I have given them to people who think they're a little small or they're a little big, they feel a little clumsy. But I also think the inclusion of a grip button that is a kind of like a clicky button, I want to say, rather than a button with a lot of travel like it is on the Quest and Quest style controllers, is an interesting choice. I've gotten used to it and it feels quite firm and premium compared to some other controllers I've used. But again, it's up to preference. I do think after a year of use, I cannot use hold to grip anymore. These buttons just don't really give that level of feedback where I can hold them for long periods of time. I have to use toggle to grip. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. They feel more premium, but if you're using hold to grip, they are very, very difficult to hold down for long periods of time, in my opinion. The haptic triggers as well are absolutely amazing. I could not live without these. It feels weird going to shooter games on other platforms like PSVR and Quest, where I don't have haptic triggers. They're something that I really didn't expect to love as much as I did when I got the headset last year, but a year later I'm feeling a little empty in some VR experiences without them. They're really great. The second to last point on these is definitely the actual shape, the orbs. They're very, very weird. A year later, I find it easy to find where I'm supposed to put my hand through. It's easy to adjust to, but I've found, demoing it to some friends and family, they're a little confused on how to hold them. It's not going to be an issue, and I haven't found it as an issue a year later. You get used to it, and they are comfortable controllers. However, I have found in some games like Swordsman, for example, or melee-focused games, it's the ring shape that they clash very, very often. And I found this also with friends and family playing when they've gone to punch an enemy and they've clashed the rings together, and that does worry me a little bit. I do wish the form factor was a little smaller. They are big controllers, and especially for traveling, although there are some accessories that do help with that in terms of traveling with the headset that I'll talk about in a bit. But in terms of traveling, they're very, very large, and it's not that it's like a Quest style controller where it's quite a long controller. They're just wide. They're really wide, and that can be a little awkward. So overall, I like the tracking method. They track really well, but the form factor, is quite large for sure. And a year later, I found that becoming not increasingly a problem, but something that I've noticed. So I am a little wary when playing melee-focused games like Legendary Tales or Swordsman, just not to clash them together, because, they're quite easily done. Lastly, battery. Now, I do want to say batteries charge fairly quickly with these guys, and I have a charging dock that I use all the time, so whenever I want to play, they're filled up. I would want to say, if you do play PSVR2 very regularly, get yourself a charging dock. It's just such peace of mind, even if it is a third-party one, not an official Sony one. I will touch on that and accessories in a bit, but the batteries themselves charge fairly quickly. It's the actual battery life that is the biggest detriment to the PSVR2 in terms of making me want to play for longer sessions, because these things last about 3.5 hours, maybe 4 at a push if you turn off all haptics, which don't do because they're really immersive. But battery life a year later has become not really a hindrance, because by the 3.5 hour point my eyes are slightly burning, but when I do want to have extended long play sessions, like when Pavlov drops at the start of the life cycle, I was playing that for hours on end, and it kind of sucked having to take breaks just to charge these things and then having to leave it for an hour and then come back. So I would love to see a model with approved battery, or honestly, Sony, hear me out. We're a year into the launch of PSVR 2. We cannot buy these things separately. I touched on that in a video a while ago, but it honestly is ridiculous that if you break one of these or you want a second pair to swap out, I'm sure I would love a second pair to swap out when I run dry. You can't do it unless you buy a whole nother headset, and that is ridiculous. But in terms of controllers, they're pretty damn great, and I do love the Sense controllers, but they're not without their small issues. But overall, big thumbs up from me. Sony did a great job with these in terms of them feeling premium, the haptics, and overall the feel of them. Although again, not without their issues. Oh, my voice is dying, but we're getting there. Don't worry, we're getting there. We're about halfway through, if that. Oh, lots to talk about. Anyway, let's talk about comfort. Overall, very, very comfortable headset. A year into its life cycle, I've gotten used to how it feels now, although it never really was a big shock to me. The Halo strap design is the same as PSVR 1, albeit with slightly less comfortable materials. However, the PSVR 1 had a really bad issue where those materials would shear off, and you'd essentially get the front head strap peeling off after like 2-3 years of use. That still could happen here, but I have a feeling the reason it's a bit more firm and is a different material that's slightly less soft is because it's more durable. So I'm hoping that's the reason for that. But to be honest, with a comfort kit like I have, there we go, it's a lot more comfortable. Mostly this is to absorb sweat, but it does pad it a little bit. And with a head strap, comfort is increased tenfold. So I'd honestly recommend looking into a head strap. It really takes the pressure off the back of your head if you're worried about that. So overall comfort, pretty great, but it can be better. Can be improved with other accessories. So honestly, you're probably fine just leaving it as is. I'm happy probably a year later I would have kept it as is, but luckily I got to try out the head strap and the comfort kit, and I haven't taken them off because they do make it fairly more comfortable. But on its own, vanilla, it's perfectly fine. However, let's talk about other accessories too, because one of them does actually require that comfort kit and that head strap, and that is the Pulse 3D headphones. I found with these, they're an amazing addition to the setup. If you can buy them secondhand, I'd say they're worth it. I wouldn't say they're worth it full price. Honestly, their build quality is fine, but yeah, for full price, that £80, I wouldn't say so, but I think I picked these up for 40, and they work perfectly great. They have really good like spatial 3D audio. An accessory I would recommend, although they do slip back if I look up, so I needed that head strap to kind of stop it in place and stop it from falling back and basically falling off my head while I play. So those accessories kind of go hand in hand. Same with accessories, as I said before, a dual charging station is basically mandatory at this point if you're using this for extended play sessions and want your controllers to be charged every time that you boot up the headset. I have a third-party one and the official Sony one. I found the official Sony one is actually, in terms of getting the controllers on there, is worse. It's kind of hard and finicky to find the right angle to get them to charge, whereas with the third-party one, no issues whatsoever. They click in really strongly, and while it is clearly built with less quality in mind because it's cheaper, it's actually worked better than the official Sony one, so have a look around online. I've done a couple reviews on the channel of them, so see how you find it. I'm very surprised we haven't got any proper wrist straps for the controllers though. It's something that I really wanted. We do have little inserts, I want to say Bobo does them. I think it's Globular Cluster actually. They do the inserts where you can kind of let your hands go inside the controllers, but I would really like, I don't know, less of an intrusive one if possible. I think wrist straps is still an area where we could delve into accessory wise, but accessories across the board are pretty good. We're about on the same standard as other headsets in terms of accessories like Quest. The big brands that are making accessories for them are making them for PSVR2, so you're not going to miss out on anything if you're really worried about accessories coming over to this platform. A year later, we have a fairly big range of them. And also lenses are another big one. You can get prescription lenses. I have them for me, even though I don't need glasses currently, although by using headsets so much in a couple of years I might do. But I use them as an extra layer of protection, so we have all of those. Various ones linked down in the description if you're looking for them. And finally, carrying cases. Honestly, there are so many different options you can go for. I myself have reviewed one on this channel. There should be another review coming out for one fairly soon as well. But you can't really go wrong with them. They're a good way to store the headset, and if you place the controllers inside each other, inside the headset halo ring, you can actually fit everything in there. So you can have a fairly tight form factor for the headset and the controllers, which is pretty perfect. I would definitely recommend investing in one of those if you move around with your headset a lot like I do. Another big point for PSVR2 that I've loved a year in advance that hasn't been utilized as much as I really wanted to in terms of gameplay, but in terms of just game design it has, is eye tracking, because we've had loads of games use dynamic foveated rendering through the use of eye tracking to make their games look sharper, and that's amazing. I got the chance to try that out with the Legendary Tales pre-release build, I should say, where the eye tracking had a toggle to disable or enable it, and that was really cool to toggle it off to see the resolution, which was so much worse than when it was toggled on. It really gave me a sense of perspective of how much work and heavy lifting the eye tracking does in terms of getting these games as good as they look. That isn't in the actual release build, unfortunately, because it kind of messed around with some of the settings, but they included that for us reviewers to just have a look and see how much work it really does. And the eye tracking there, across the board in terms of games, is phenomenal. And you can see it in a lot of gameplay as well, where the content creator or the person playing is looking, and it does a great job. But in actual gameplay, I think eye tracking still, a year in, for a lot of games, leaves a little bit to be desired. Some games do it really well, like Horizon Call the Mountain for the menus, and Switchback VR for the blinking mechanics, and also Pavlov for the eye tracking and blinking, where you see other players where they're looking with their eyes. That's awesome stuff. But as a roster on PSVR2 in terms of library, I would love to see a couple more games incorporate it in creative ways. Legendary Tales did just come out as well, where I think the eye tracking guides your magic, which is awesome. And Synapse, of course, I can't go through that list without saying Synapse. The telekinesis with the eye tracking there is awesome, but there's just a couple games in a sea of releases on PSVR2 that use it in a really creative way. And to be honest, in retrospect, there's a lot that do use it well, but I think I'm looking for that next switchback that really brings something credible and new to the table when it comes to eye tracking and how to utilize it in game. So an amazing feature that I'm really glad we have. I hope we don't lose it on the PSVR 3. Hope they keep it when that eventually comes around. But yeah, amazing, not unexpected feature, but one that I've really been enjoying using through a manner of games, but I'm looking forward to the future and how other games can use that too. Okay, time to talk about one of the big points, which is the wire. Because wired VR is becoming not a thing of the past, but something that a lot of companies are moving away from, and having a tether connected to your console is a big deal to some people. How have I found it a year later? Honestly, haven't really noticed it too much at all. I've used wireless VR, I've loved wireless VR when I've used it, but in terms of having extra power, I'm happily taking that trade-off. The wire is very long on PSVR2, longer than it was on PSVR1, and longer than other headsets that I've used like the DPVR E4. And while I do want the wire to be replaceable so damn badly, because if that breaks, you've got to send it all the way back to Sony, it should be unplugged on either end. That should be just something that is an option for the player to replace it if they want to. And that was actually leaked before launch, was that the cable could be unplugged. And I think technically you can, but you're going to void your warranty if you do that. So it's a bit of a tough one. And that should have been just standard. It should be removable. But as a wire that is there, granted if it breaks you've got problems, but in terms of length and weight especially, it's not a heavy wire, you don't really feel it. And if you run it down your back like I usually do when playing, you're not really going to notice it. If you keep it on your front, you're going to end up snagging your hands on it when you're playing more active games. But yeah, the wire isn't a big deal to me. I'm happily taking it and getting the benefits of the extra power on the PS5. But I understand that a lot of people, they've done wireless VR now and they can't go back. So again, it's something that will feel more dated as we go into the future, and perhaps they'll bring out a wireless version. If they do, you best believe I'll be covering that. But yeah, as a piece of hardware, it's just going to feel dated because of the long lifespan it has, especially as, you know, wireless VR moves forward. But as it stands, not a big deal a year later. I do want to touch on something as well that I'm not sure if a lot of other people will. That's really, really great from not only a content standpoint, letting me see what the content's going to look like for you guys before I've properly finished finalizing and recording, but also because of social experiences. And that is the social screen, because the social screen is one of the most underrated features on here, and it's one of the things that really separates the PSVR2 to some other wireless headsets out there for me. And that is just the ease of use in terms of displaying this headset and what the person in it is seeing to outsiders. It's such an underrated feature socially to have, because I've had a couple weeks now where I've gone and shown off the PSVR2 to a bunch of mates who have never played the headset before, and we've plugged it into the TV in one of their cinema rooms in there where they live, and we've rented that out, we've rented the whole space out, and it's honestly been such a easy experience to do. I don't need to sync up anything, I just plug in the HDMI to the PS5 like you do in any other game, and what they're seeing in the headset is displayed on the TV. And I didn't expect to love that as much as I thought I would when I bought the headset last year, because I used it a lot on PSVR1, don't get me wrong, but after testing out other headsets that don't have that easy function, it's something that I've come to really appreciate. Honestly, the social screen, amazing feature, and it's so easy to use, and it brings people together very, very easily and bridges that gap between those sitting in the room watching you play and the person in the headset. So big thumbs up from me there. And our final point, which is being broken into a few sub-points, is games, because PSVR2 has a lot of games. Contrary to what some people may tell you, there's loads. Not all of them are great, but we have a lot of big hitters, and I want to talk about AAA first. We don't have the plans for AAA in the future on PSVR2, but right now in the first year, we've had loads of bangers. Compared to PSVR1, we've had exponentially more. We've had GT7, Resi 4, and Village. We've had Horizon Call the Mountain. These are big games that have been brought over to VR or built for VR, and there have been plenty of games funded by Sony that have also come over that's not been in their first party studios. But I'm looking forward to more of those in the future, and hopefully we get a word or two from Sony about what they're going to do in terms of AAA VR. I do think we are going to get an Astrobot game sometime this year. Not sure when that will be, but I think Sony's planning to release a new one. I think that will be hybrid, just like GT7 and Resi 4 and 8. I think it's going to be flat screen and VR, and Astrobot Rescue Mission I've heard was incredible, so I'm looking forward to trying that out. But overall in the first year, I'm incredibly satisfied with the AAA offerings, spanning various different genres to a high level of quality that I just hadn't really seen before in VR, except for in very rare cases like Half-Life Alyx, where Valve got involved. Now, indie games have also blown me away throughout the entire first year. Kind of incredible. not gonna lie, in terms of the innovation that's happened here. Some real gems, and I can't even begin to list them all off, to be honest with you. Just to name a few that have really surprised me. Kayak VR, visually, some people might not love its gameplay and find it boring. I can spend hours and hours in there. I just love the scenery in VR. Puzzling Places has come out of nowhere and just blown me away and got me hooked. Obviously, indie games span so much more than just those two, and there are so many, especially go and watch the tier list video that I did. Link will be in the description to that. For me, going through some of my favorite games. But indie-wise, we've got so many devs hopping on and reporting good sales numbers as well. That's the thing. These aren't people porting over to the headset and losing money. They're making it, and that's really, really good. And I think the future's bright. We're going to get games like Ghost of Tabor. We just had Breaches. Obviously, Pavlov was a big, big hit when the headset came out. And the indie genre right now, I think, is doing very well, especially with the launch of Legendary Tales. Even though it's at quite a high price, I really hope that's done well for the developers and it's kind of encouraged others to bring their games over to the headset and the platform, because I think that's sold quite well, and because of the high price, it's done really well monetarily. So indie games, I'm really excited to see where we go in the future for that. We have a new games every month video at the start of every month where we go through the games coming out. Most of them are usually indie, so keep an eye out for that video every time a new month rolls around. But yeah, overall, I can't say I'm dissatisfied with the indie lineup. From social games like Walkabout to action games like Pavlov and Breaches, to exploration and survival games like Green Hell and Song in the Smoke, to tabletop games like Demeo. There's so much here, and I'm really satisfied with it. Now, future games, we have Metro on the horizon, officially announced at Sony's State of Play, and we've also got loads of games coming each month. Ghost of Tabor, as I mentioned before, is coming over to the headset. Really, really excited for that one. It's a promising VR game, and I think won VR Game of the Year last year at the VR Awards, I want to say. I've been following Combat Waffle for a while, who are the devs for the game. I've even covered it a couple times on the channel back when it was in early states, like early last year. So those videos are still up, but they are outdated in terms of how the game looks and plays. Even then, I was really impressed with it. And if we get the really polished and good looking and good feeling PSVR2 version, I'm really excited for that. Into the Radius 2 will probably get ported as well. No hope for the first game, I don't think, but yeah, I think the future games lineup is looking good. And with the new Astrobot game most likely on the way, in my opinion, I think we'll be fine there. And then hybrid games, the next Resident Evil game will also be in VR, just to name another. The future's looking bright, but as I always say, we need more confirmation from Sony. It's all good me sitting here and going, I think this is going to come out, and I think this is going to come out. We need a roadmap, or not even a roadmap, because Sony doesn't really do that very often, but just more states of play and more game announcements, even if they're far off, just to give us a bit of that sense of, okay, you've invested in the platform, we're going to give you what you want. So we'll see where we go with that. I'm confident that we'll get some great games. Not even that far in the future, but for the next couple of years. But for the first year, I'm very satisfied with the selection we have. I'm never struggling to find a game to play. If I hop on PSVR 2, it's always with a game in mind that I really want to jump back onto, and most of the time, it's a variety of them. So big thumbs up in game selection for me. However, I do want to talk about apps, because that is where the headset is properly lacking. After seeing Apple Vision Pro, those environments and those integration of the apps that it has on there, like Disney Plus, is so cool. And I wish Sony would kind of get Disney Plus and Netflix and YouTube to make environments just like Apple Vision Pro has. That's one of the worst things about PSVR 2, in my opinion, is the flat screen in the void that you get every time you hop into a menu. Imagine if you're in a Steam Home-like environment where you could pick out your games and put them into a little disc player or something, or you could go and interact with something in your home space, and you're greeted by something kind of warm when you boot up your VR headset, and not just the flat screen. And in that, we really do need native app support for like YouTube, for 360 videos. I loved watching them back on PSVR 1, and it's just not a thing on PSVR 2, and I really just don't know why. Sony needs to get their act in gear, really, and get that sorted. Same for Disney. Imagine those Tatooine environments that Apple Vision Pro has. That would be amazing to have on PSVR 2. So there's a lot of potential, I would say. And if we don't get that within the next year, I think we're never getting that. And that really sucks. But overall, that's my one down note, really, on apps and games, is that we don't have many content viewing apps. It's not to say that you can't watch anything on PSVR 2. I mean, you can use all these apps. You can watch YouTube in a massive cinema screen, and same with Disney Plus. For an example, I wanted to watch The Creator, but my monitor it isn't the largest. It's a 27-inch. So I booted up my PSVR2 and I watched the creator all the way through on Disney Plus on the massive cinema screen. And sure, it means that the clarity isn't quite there as it would be on a screen like this, which is proper 4K. But it's a great way of watching it. And you can still do that, but it would be nice to have a bit more first-party integration that's native in the headset for apps like that, because we really do need it. Whew. Yeah, there we have it. My voice is gone. It's been an hour, about. I'm assuming this video will probably level out to be about 25 minutes. Let me know if I'm right in the comments below. But yeah, that was a long ramble and long talk across multiple different topics of how I'm feeling a year into the launch of PSVR2. And overall, it's still a great headset to buy. It's not feeling dated or anything like that. It's got some great games, great experiences, some of the best hardware in the business still a year later. If they do introduce any sort of refresh, which I doubt they would, but they did for PSVR 1, to be fair. They released the refresh of the Gen 1 or Gen 2, where the button positioning was different. If they did that, I would be very tempted to check it out and see what's different, but I think overall the headset is probably in a position where Sony is happy with it and we as consumers are happy with it. I'm just hoping for more game support, but if you're on the fence about buying it a year into its launch and its life cycle, go for it, because it is one of the best pieces of VR hardware on the market right now for the price. And if you have a PS5, you have half the bundle already, so definitely go for it. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I'm gonna go give my voice a rest. Please do let me know what you think of PSVR2 now that we're a year into the life cycle. And also, we have Patreon and memberships open. The links are in the description below. Thank you to Luke Bentley, currently our patron, our hero, as I'm calling him, for supporting the channel. Every single donation every month is another thing to keep me going and making videos and content like this for you guys. So thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.